Dennis Rodman, 5-time NBA champion, 7-time rebounding champion, Hall of Famer, and for decades, the most misunderstood athlete in professional sports. When people think of Dennis Rodman, they think of the dyed hair, the wedding dress, the headlines. But what if everything we thought we knew about him was wrong? What if the man the world called crazy was actually surviving the only way he knew how? This is the real story of Dennis Rodman, a story that would eventually help change how we talk about mental health in professional sports forever. Dennis Keith Rodman was born on May 13, 1961, in Trenton, New Jersey, but his story really begins in the Oak Cliff projects of Dallas, Texas, one of the most impoverished and dangerous neighborhoods in the city. And it begins with an absence. When Dennis was just 3 years old, his father, Philander Rodman Jr., left the family. He moved to the Philippines and went on to father dozens of children with multiple women. Estimates of Dennis's half-siblings range from 26 to as many as 47. His father's name itself became a cruel irony, a living reminder of abandonment. For a 3-year-old child, losing a parent isn't just sad, it shapes everything that comes after. This kind of early loss creates what's called an attachment wound. It makes it difficult to trust that people will stay, that love is real, that you're worthy of being chosen. Dennis would spend his entire life trying to heal that wound, searching for father figures who wouldn't leave him. Years later, he would say about his father, "I haven't seen him in more than 30 years, so what's there to miss? Some man brought me into this world. That doesn't mean I have a father." Those words aren't indifference, they're protection. They're a young boy building a wall around a wound that never stopped bleeding. After his father left, Dennis was raised by his mother Shirley, alongside his 2 sisters. Shirley worked up to 4 jobs at a time to keep her children fed and housed, but emotional availability is hard when you're fighting for survival. Dennis later described his mother as someone who never hugged her children or told them she loved them, explaining that all she knew was abuse. Making matters worse, both of his sisters were exceptional basketball players who would become All-Americans. Dennis was small for his age, athletically unremarkable, and he felt like the odd man out in an all-female household that celebrated a type of success he couldn't achieve. He became a laughingstock when he tried to tag along with his sisters. Then came the ultimate rejection. At 18 years old, his mother kicked him out of the house. He became homeless. For up to 2 years, Dennis Rodman drifted through Dallas, sleeping in parks, behind convenience stores, and in the homes of anyone who would take him in. He worked as an overnight janitor at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. He believed his only options in life were to be in jail, be a drug dealer, or be dead. During this time, he was arrested for stealing approximately 50 watches from an airport gift shop. He hadn't sold them. He'd given them away to people in his community, desperately trying to be liked, to be known, to matter to someone. Think about that for a moment. A child abandoned by his father, rejected by his mother, living on the streets, stealing just to have something to give away so people might notice him. How does a person survive that kind of loneliness? How do they build a life from that foundation? If you're finding this story as powerful as we are, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into the real stories behind sports' most fascinating figures. Then something miraculous happened. Dennis had a late growth spurt, shooting from 5'11" to 6'7" in a single year. He started playing basketball at a small NAIA school and was extraordinary. In 1986, the Detroit Pistons drafted him. At 25 years old, Dennis Rodman entered the NBA, and for the first time in his life, he found a family. The Detroit Pistons of the late 1980s were called the Bad Boys. They were physical, aggressive, and unapologetically tough. They were blue-collar fighters in a league that celebrated finesse. For Dennis Rodman, who had arrived as a shy, introverted young man, this team was perfect. His hypervigilance, his relentless energy, his need to prove his worth through sheer effort, all of it was celebrated. The city of Detroit embraced him. His teammates became his brothers. He later said, "When I got to Detroit, they embraced me as one. I was so enamored of the way that they loved me." Central to this transformation was Pistons head coach Chuck Daly. Daly was calm, accepting, and emotionally intelligent. He saw past Dennis's awkwardness and recognized both his sensitivity and his unique talent. In Daly, Dennis found the father he'd never had. This was deeply paternal. Daly provided unconditional acceptance, and that stability unlocked Dennis's potential. Under Daly's guidance, Dennis Rodman became a 2-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year and helped win 2 NBA championships in 1989 and 1990. For those years, he was home, he was safe, he belonged. But the nature of professional sports has changed. By the early 1990s, the Bad Boys era was ending. Key players departed, then Chuck Daly resigned. For Dennis, this wasn't just a career transition. It was the abandonment he'd feared his entire life, happening all over again. His marriage was also failing, and he felt disconnected from his young daughter. He didn't understand the business side of the league. All he knew was that the family that had accepted him was leaving him. He later said, "Once a lot of the people that loved me were gone and Chuck Daly was gone, I was all by myself. I had nobody to turn to." In the spring of 1993, Dennis Rodman's pain reached a breaking point. He was skipping practices, refusing road trips, visibly unraveling. One night in April, he drove his pickup truck to the parking lot of the Palace of Auburn Hills, the arena where he'd won championships. He sat in his truck with a loaded rifle in his lap. He'd written a note trying to explain the unbearable pain he felt. He later insisted it wasn't about basketball. It had to do with this love that I wanted, and it suddenly just left me. It was about feeling betrayed because I wanted to be loved so much in my life. He turned on the radio and listened to Pearl Jam songs about alienation and loss. Exhausted, he fell asleep. Police, alerted by concerned friends, found him there. That night could have been the end of Dennis Rodman's story. Instead, it became a turning point. In the aftermath, he began to reframe what had happened. He wasn't a man who had failed at suicide. He was a man who had killed a version of himself that no longer served him. He said he killed the Dennis Rodman that had tried to conform to what everybody wanted him to be. He killed the good soldier, the happy teammate, the man who bent himself into shapes to earn love that always disappeared. What survived that night was someone new, someone who would never again give others the power to define him or destroy him. What came next was the persona the world would never forget, the dyed hair in every color imaginable, the tattoos, the piercings, the wedding dress. After brief stints with the San Antonio Spurs where he clashed with their conservative culture, Dennis was traded to the Chicago Bulls in 1995. There, under coach Phil Jackson and alongside Michael Jordan, he found leaders who didn't try to change him. They managed him, they gave him structure on the court and freedom off it, and he thrived. He won 3 more championships with the Bulls. He became one of the greatest rebounders and defenders in NBA history, but his behavior remained unpredictable. He took unsanctioned trips to Las Vegas mid-season. He appeared at book signings in a wedding dress. He dated Madonna and married Carmen Electra. To the outside world, this looked like chaos, but psychologically, it was armor. By creating an exterior so outrageous, so unpredictable, Dennis kept people at a safe emotional distance. He controlled the narrative. He was no longer the abandoned boy who could be hurt. He was the worm, the man who did whatever he wanted. The world could love the character he created, but they could never get close enough to destroy the person underneath. It was brilliant. It was exhausting, and it was necessary for his survival. After his NBA career ended, the structure that had contained his pain disappeared. Without basketball, Dennis struggled. He battled alcoholism publicly, a clear form of self-medication for depression, anxiety, and unresolved trauma. His legal record includes multiple DUI arrests, including one in 2018 where his blood alcohol content was 3 times the legal limit. He's been to rehab multiple times. His financial advisor stated in 2012, Dennis, although a very sweet person, is an alcoholic. His sickness impacts his ability to get work. He's acknowledged that sobriety is a struggle, something he takes one day at a time. Recently, he said his motivation to stay sober is his children. He wants to see them grow up. He wants to break the cycle his own father started. Here's what's remarkable about Dennis Rodman's story. In the 1990s, the language to discuss mental health in professional sports barely existed. Athletes were expected to be warriors who buried their emotions. Dennis's behavior was called crazy, bizarre, the antics of a bad boy. Nobody used words like trauma, depression, or anxiety. But by living his pain so publicly, by refusing to hide his struggles, Dennis forced a conversation that sports desperately needed. His 1993 suicide attempt made headlines. His mid-season mental health breaks to Las Vegas, condemned at the time, look different now. He was practicing what we'd now call mental load management before anyone had language for it. He said he was one of the few players back then who were opening the door to that an NBA player is a human too. Other athletes have confirmed his impact. Meta World Peace cited Dennis's vulnerability as inspiration to address his own mental health. Today, thanks to advocacy from a new generation of athletes, the conversation around mental health in sports has transformed. Dennis Rodman didn't set out to be a mental health advocate. He was just a wounded man trying to survive. But his survival mattered. Dennis Rodman is now 63 years old. His life hasn't been easy. He's still fighting battles with addiction and estrangement from some of his children. But he's also a Hall of Famer whose defensive genius changed basketball. He's a 5-time champion whose rebounding numbers remain untouchable. And he's a pioneer who, without meaning to, helped create space for athletes to be human, to struggle, to survive. His story isn't tragic. It's a testament to resilience. It's proof that even from the darkest foundations, greatness can emerge. It's a reminder that the people we call crazy are often just surviving in ways we don't understand yet. So the next time you see footage of Dennis Rodman in a wedding dress or read about another legal trouble, remember the full story. Remember the 3-year-old boy whose father left. Remember the teenager sleeping behind a convenience store. Remember the man in a parking lot with a gun who chose to live. Dennis Rodman's legacy isn't just championships, it's survival. And that might be his greatest victory of all. If this story changed how you see Dennis Rodman, let us know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed because there are so many more untold stories in sports that deserve to be understood.